We were a happy family. At least, I thought we were. My husband Mark works as a sales manager at an IT company. From early morning until late at night, sometimes even on weekends, he was consumed by work. But he always had a smile on his face, saying to me and our daughter Emma, "You two are everything to me." And he'd add that the baby we were expecting would become a treasure to our family too. I work from home as a freelance graphic designer. Even during my pregnancy, I took on client projects within reasonable limits, designing logos and brochures. I was careful about my health, and my regular checkups showed no problems. Best of all, our 8-year-old daughter Emma was eagerly looking forward to the birth of her new brother or sister. Emma is a bright, intelligent girl. She does well in school and has lots of friends. Talking to the baby in my belly had become part of her daily routine, placing her hand there and saying gently, "Come out soon, we'll play together." Watching Emma like this, I savored the happiness of being a mother. But over the past few months, a small uneasiness had cast a faint shadow over my heart. Mark's behavior had changed slightly from before. Late-night phone calls increased, and he started hurrying to another room to speak in hushed tones. His business trips became more frequent too. He'd be away from home too, sometimes 3 times a week. He kept his smartphone with him constantly, and when I'd try to glance at the screen, he'd quickly angle it away. One evening, I asked him about it. "You seem really busy with work lately." Mark gave a tired smile and answered, "I've got a big project going on, and the client is tough to deal with." But then he squeezed my hand and said, "I'm doing this for you and the kids, though. Things will settle down soon." His hand was warm, but somehow felt distant. I told myself it was just work stress. Emma seemed to notice the change in her father too. She used to run right up to him when he came home, but lately she'd been keeping her distance, watching him carefully. One day, I asked Emma, "Did something happen with Daddy?" Emma shook her head and answered, "Nothing happened." But her eyes wavered, as if she wanted to say something. I didn't press her. I thought maybe I was making too much of small things because my emotions were unstable in late pregnancy. As my due date approached, my anxiety grew bit by bit. Mark's behavior became increasingly unnatural, and he spent less time at home. Eating dinner together dwindled to 2 or 3 times a week. But he kept repeating, "I'm working for you guys." Then the day my labor began finally arrived. Regular pains attacked me from morning, with the intervals getting shorter and shorter. I called Mark with trembling hands. He said in a confused voice, "I have a really important meeting today." But he added, "I'll come right away, don't worry." Believing his words, I asked a neighbor to take Emma to school and called a taxi to the hospital by myself. Shortly after arriving at the hospital, Emma came rushing in, having left school early. Holding my hand, she said, "It's okay, Mama. I'm here with you." Encouraged by Emma, I endured the pain of childbirth. Messages from Mark came several times, "The meeting is running long, almost done." In the evening, I safely delivered a baby boy. When that small, warm life was placed in my arms, tears streamed down my face. Emma, also crying, said, "It's a brother, he's so cute," and gently touched the baby's cheek. The two of us welcomed our new family member. Mark still hadn't arrived. That night, exhausted, I lay down on the hospital bed. Emma sat in a chair, occasionally looking out the window or peering at my face. A message came from Mark, "On my way now." Relieved, I fell into a deep sleep. When I woke, morning light was streaming through gaps in the hospital room curtains. My whole body ached. The fatigue from childbirth still lingered. As I slowly sat up, I noticed Emma was already awake, looking out the window. My daughter's small back seemed somehow tense. "Emma, good morning," I called out. Emma turned around, showing a slightly stiff smile. "Morning, Mama. Did you sleep well?" "Yes. Did Daddy contact you again? Yeah, Emma answered briefly. He said he'll be here soon. I started to feel relieved at those words, but I was bothered by how strangely rigid my daughter's expression was. Normally, hearing that her father was coming would make her look much happier. Soon after, a nurse brought breakfast. She was a kind-looking middle-aged woman with a name tag that read Jennifer. Good morning, Mrs. Thompson. Did you sleep well last night? Yes, thank you. Your husband came late last night, Jennifer said. But you were sleeping so deeply that he left without waking you. Really? I was surprised. I hadn't known Mark had come. Why hadn't he woken me? I'd wanted to at least see his face. Emma started to open her mouth as if to say something, but quickly closed it. I was curious about her reaction, but with the nurse there, I couldn't ask more. Around the time I finished breakfast, Emma suddenly stood up and said, I'm going to the bathroom, and left the room. But a few minutes after returning, she said, bathroom again, and went out. When she came back for the third time, I asked, Emma, is your stomach upset? No, I'm fine, my daughter answered quickly. I just wanted to walk in the hallway. That explanation felt unnatural. Emma kept going out into the hallway, seeming to look around. As if she were searching for something or someone. Late morning, the baby started crying. As I tried to pick him up, Emma rushed over. Mama, let me hold him. Emma, you can't hold him properly yet. It's okay, I learned at school, Emma said with a desperate expression. Then, carefully cradling the baby in her arms, she looked straight at me and said, Mama, don't let go of this baby. Never. I was bewildered by the weight of those words. Of course not, Emma. He's our baby. Promise me, Emma's eyes were serious. I promise, I answered, but anxiety grew at my daughter's strange behavior. Something was wrong. Did Emma know something? Afternoon, a message arrived from Mark. I'll definitely be there this afternoon. I can't wait to see you. I love you. Reading the message, my heart warmed a little. He'd just been busy after all. He'd come this afternoon. Then the three of us, no, the four of us, could take our first step as a new family. But when Emma noticed I was reading Mark's message, her face changed color. Mama, is Daddy coming? Yes, he says he'll be here this afternoon. Emma bit her lip. Then muttered softly, I see. As time passed, Emma's behavior became increasingly strange. Near evening, my daughter walked to the hospital room door and checked the doorknob repeatedly. She seemed to be testing whether it would lock. Emma, I called out. What are you worried about? If something's wrong, talk to Mama. Emma turned around and looked at me. Fear floated in her eyes. A serious fear that an 8-year-old child shouldn't have to show. Nothing's wrong, Mama, my daughter said, but her voice trembled. After 5 in the afternoon, Jennifer visited the room again. Mrs. Thompson, we received a call from your husband. He says he'll be here around 7 tonight. Thank you, I answered. After the nurse left, I looked at Emma. My daughter stood by the window, her small hands clenched tightly. Her little body seemed to be trembling slightly. Emma, are you really okay? Mama, Emma said without turning around. If I say something strange, will you believe me? Of course. You're my daughter. Emma started to say something but ended up saying nothing. She just kept staring out the window. The clock passed 6 in the afternoon. The hospital room was quiet, with only the sound of people's footsteps passing in the hallway. Emma took out her children's smartphone and kept checking the screen. It was a simple model the school had given her for emergency contact. Daddy will be here soon, I said brightly. We're excited, aren't we, Emma? Let's show Daddy your brother. Emma nodded weakly. Yeah. I'm excited. But there was absolutely no excitement in that voice. Outside the window, darkness was beginning to fall. November dusk comes early. The hospital room lighting was starting to feel increasingly unreliable. Emma sat in a chair, hands folded in her lap. She looked as if she were waiting for something terrible to happen. I picked up the baby, feeling his warmth, and gazed at my daughter's profile. What was Emma afraid of? Why was she so tense? Why couldn't she be happy that her father was coming? The clock hand approached 7. My heart began beating faster for no reason. As if my daughter's anxiety had infected me too. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Someone was approaching. Emma caught her breath and stared at the door. Then she suddenly stood up and reached for the light switch. With a click, the room was plunged into darkness. Emma! What are you doing? I cried out in surprise. In the darkness, Emma's small shadow approached me. My daughter's voice trembled, but at the same time held strong determination. Mama, hold the baby right now and hide in the next bed. What do you mean? What happened? I was confused. This semi-private room had an empty bed next to mine. But why did we need to hide there? Please. Hurry. Tears mixed with Emma's voice. Trust me, Mama. Please trust me. When I saw my daughter's desperate expression, something moved inside me. A mother's instinct sensed danger. I didn't know why. But Emma wasn't lying. This child knew something. And she was trying to protect us. I held the baby tightly to my chest and quickly moved to the next bed. As I tried to hide under the bed, Emma whispered, "On top, Mama. Lie down on the bed." I did as I was told and lay down on the next bed. Emma brought a blanket and carefully draped it over me and the baby. Don't make any sound. Not the baby either. Under the blanket it was dark and stuffy. I held my baby tightly to my chest. Fortunately, my son was asleep and quiet. I just nursed him, and he was sleeping contentedly. Please, don't wake up. Don't cry. In the darkness, my heart pounded violently. What was going to happen? Why did we have to hide? What was Emma afraid of? Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Multiple people. A man's voice and a woman's voice. The footsteps approached. Toward our hospital room. And then I heard that voice. This is the room. It was Mark's voice. I caught my breath under the blanket. My husband's voice. The voice of my beloved husband. But why was it so frightening? Why did I feel as if my heart was freezing? I'm going in, Mark said. The sound of the doorknob turning. Slowly, the door opened. The lights are off. Mark's voice held confusion. Maybe she's sleeping, a woman's voice answered. An unfamiliar voice. A young woman. I opened my eyes wide under the blanket. Who? Who was this woman? Well, whatever. We'll wake her, Mark said. That voice didn't have its usual gentleness. It sounded cold, businesslike. Footsteps entered the hospital room. 2 people. Mark and that woman. I stiffened under the blanket. Quietly holding my baby. My son, please don't wake up. Don't cry. Huh? She's not here, Mark's voice took on an edge of panic. Nobody's in the bed, the woman's voice was also surprised. The bathroom? Mark said. Footsteps headed toward the bathroom door. The sound of the door opening. Not there. Where'd she go? Mark's voice mixed with irritation. A panic as if he'd lost something important. Under the blanket, I was so tense I could almost hear my own heartbeat. The baby moved a little. Please don't wake up. I rocked my son gently. Why don't you call Rachel's cell? The woman said. No, that's a bad idea. It'll make her suspicious, Mark answered. Make her suspicious? What was suspicious about a husband calling his wife? My head was spinning with confusion. Just then, Emma's voice rang out. Daddy? What's wrong? My daughter's voice was surprisingly calm. As if nothing were amiss. Emma. Where's Mama? Mark's voice turned toward our daughter. Mama went to the nurse's station. She said there was a test for the baby. I was amazed under the blanket. Emma was lying. So skillfully, so naturally. A test. At this hour? Mark's voice carried doubt. Yeah, a nurse came just now and took her. Emma didn't waver. A routine newborn test. She said she'd be back in about 30 minutes. A silence followed. I held my breath under the blanket. The baby moved a little again. He was starting to wake up. Please, just sleep a little longer. I see, Mark finally said. Then we'll have to wait. Let's go to the nurse's station, the woman said. If we wait there, maybe we'll see her. Right, Mark answered. Emma, you wait here. When Mama comes back, tell her Daddy was here. Okay, Emma answered obediently. Carol, you wait here, Mark said to the woman. I'll go check at the nurse's station. Carol. The woman's name was Carol. My heart kept pounding violently. All right, the woman called Carol answered. Mark's footsteps left the hospital room. The door closed. But Carol was still in the room. I could feel her presence. She seemed to be standing quietly by the window. I endured under the blanket. The baby was starting to wake up. His little mouth moved, about to cry. I desperately rocked my son, pressing him to my chest. Please don't cry. Please. Emma's voice was heard again. Are you Daddy's friend? My daughter asked the woman. Yes, that's right, Carol's voice was gentle. You're Emma. Daddy talks about you a lot. Really? Emma answered calmly. Do you want to see the baby? I froze under the blanket. Emma, what are you saying? What? Carol also sounded surprised. I brought him to the next bed, Emma said. Mama was tired, so I thought it would be better if it was quiet. No. Emma was lying. But why? I trusted my daughter and stayed perfectly still. Oh, you're right, Carol's footsteps approached. To the next bed where I was. I held my baby even tighter. My son woke up and made a small sound. I gently covered my son's mouth with my hand. I'm sorry. But don't cry right now. He's adorable, Carol's voice was heard very close. She was near the blanket. This child who? Who was supposed to become your child? At Emma's words, the air in the hospital room froze. I heard Carol gasp. Under the blanket, I tried to understand the meaning of my daughter's words. Was supposed to become your child. What did that mean? This woman. My baby. What are you saying? Carol's voice trembled. I know, Emma's voice was quiet but strong. I know about the plan you and Daddy had. You were going to take the baby and run away, weren't you? Silence. Long, heavy silence. In my head, everything began to connect. Mark's suspicious behavior. The late-night phone calls. The increased business trips. And tonight, coming to the hospital room with an unknown woman. You're a smart girl, Carol's voice changed. Cold, hard. But this isn't something a child should know. Mama knows too, Emma said. What? She just heard everything. At that moment, I made a decision. It was no longer time to hide. I threw off the blanket and stood up holding the baby, facing Carol. Even in the darkness, I could see her outline. She had beautiful features. But in her eyes floated surprise and guilt. "Who are you?" I said quietly. My voice trembled, but I tried to stay as calm as possible. Carol stood frozen for several seconds, unable to say anything. Then she answered softly. "Rachel." She knew my name. Of course she did. I was Mark's wife. Mark's mistress. I continued. Carol lowered her eyes. Her answer was silence, but that said everything. "Were you planning to take my baby?" Anger surged up in my voice. "My child. This baby I just gave birth to today." Carol's voice shook. "I can't have children." At that confession, I lost my words for a moment. But anger quickly returned. "So that means you can steal someone else's child?" "Mark," Carol continued. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Mark was planning to make you sign parental rights termination papers after you gave birth. He'd use your postpartum depression, take advantage while your judgment was impaired. Then he'd legally take the child and we'd run away overseas." Emma said. My daughter was standing by our side, illuminating the screen of her smartphone. "I found the plane tickets. In Daddy's suitcase. 3 tickets. 2 adults and 1 infant." I looked at my daughter. How long had Emma known about this? How long had she carried this burden alone? "Emma," I searched for words. "When did you?" 2 weeks ago, Emma answered. "I saw Daddy's suitcase. When he came back from a business trip, I tried to help organize his luggage. And I found the tickets. So I also looked at Daddy's smartphone." "I'm sorry, Mama. But I thought something was wrong." "You don't need to apologize," I told my daughter. "You didn't do anything wrong." Carol leaned against the wall and sank down as if collapsing. She covered her face with both hands. "I just wanted a child. For so long I wanted one. I continued fertility treatment for years, but it didn't work. I considered adoption too, but there were age limits and various conditions. And then I met Mark, and I knew he had a family, but he said he loved me and you planned to steal my baby," I said coldly. "Mark said," Carol continued through tears. "He said he didn't love you anymore, but if he divorced you there'd be a custody battle, so after the baby was born, he'd give Rachel postpartum depression medication, and while her judgment was impaired he'd make her sign papers, and then he could legally take the child." I felt nauseous. To think the man I'd loved had planned something so horrible. But Carol raised her face. I started to think it was wrong. That this wasn't right. But Mark said all the preparations were done, the tickets were bought, let's start over in a new place. I got scared, but I couldn't stop it. "Excuses," I said. "You had choices too. You could have reported it to the police. You could have told me." "You're right," Carol nodded. I was weak. I gave in to desire. My wish to be a mother blew away all ethics and morality. Just then, the door opened. "Carol, they're still not at the nurse's station." Mark entered and froze. The hospital room lights were still off. But in the moonlight, he could clearly see his wife standing there holding the baby. From the next bed. "Rachel," the blood drained from Mark's face. "I think you owe me an explanation, Mark," I said. My voice was cold as ice. I was surprisingly calm even to myself. Maybe when anger reaches its limit, people become calm instead. Mark couldn't say anything. His mouth moved open and closed, but no words came out. Emma took out her smartphone. "I recorded everything," my daughter said. "Everything Carol said. Daddy's plan, the parental rights termination papers, the plane tickets. More color drained from Mark's face. He looked at his daughter. His 8-year-old daughter was holding evidence that would end his life. Mark finally found his voice. I was doing this for you. Be quiet, I said. I didn't want to hear my husband's voice anymore. I don't want to hear anything more. Not your lies or your excuses. My hands were shaking. But I held the baby firmly. I wouldn't give this child to anyone. I wouldn't let anyone take him. Rachel, please, listen to me. Mark took a step closer. Don't come near me. I shouted. You're not my husband. I don't know you anymore. You're not the person I loved. Mark stopped. In his eyes finally floated the despair of someone who understood what he had done. I reached for the nurse call button by the bed and pressed it hard. A few seconds later, a nurse's voice came through the intercom. Mrs. Thompson, what's wrong? Please call security and the police, I said calmly. My husband and this woman are trying to kidnap my baby. We'll be right there. The nurse's voice became tense. Mark backed away. Rachel, wait. This is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I sneered. Emma recorded everything. Your plan, this woman's confession. Don't think you can escape. Carol remained sitting on the floor, continuing to cry. She seemed to have no more strength to resist. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. The sound of multiple people running. Security and nurses. Emma came to my side. I pulled my daughter close with one arm. In my other arm, the baby. My family. My real family. The door opened and 2 men in security uniforms and Nurse Jennifer entered. What happened? One of the security guards asked. I took a deep breath and began to explain. About Mark and Carol's plan. About the tickets Emma had discovered. And about how tonight they'd come to the hospital room to take the baby. My daughter recorded all the conversations, I said. All the evidence is here. Security immediately restrained Mark and Carol. Mark kept repeating, it's a misunderstanding, to the end, but no one believed him. Carol didn't resist, just cried. The police arrived and the 2 were taken away. Emma, the baby, and I remained in the hospital room. Holding my daughter, I said. Thank you, Emma. If you hadn't noticed. If you hadn't been brave. Emma buried her face in my chest. Finally, like the 8-year-old girl she was, she began to cry. I was scared, Mama, my daughter said through tears. I was scared the whole time. But I had to protect you and my brother. You did so well, I stroked my daughter's head. You really did so well. The 3 of us held each other in the dark hospital room. The long night was finally coming to an end. 3 months passed. Autumn transitioned to winter, and all the leaves had fallen from the street trees. We'd started a new life in a new apartment. Divorce proceedings with Mark were progressing, and I only communicated with him through my lawyer. He'd been charged with attempted kidnapping and was out on bail, but I never saw him anymore. Emma became brighter than before. Released from the burden of that night, she'd regained her natural childlike spirit. She eagerly helped care for her brother, and it became her routine to peek at the baby's face first thing after coming home from school. Noah, I'm home, my daughter would say gently. We'd named the baby Noah. The name of the person from the Bible who survived the Great Flood. We too had survived a storm. We'd reached the promised land of a new life. One day, a letter arrived in the mailbox. Seeing the sender's name, I hesitated for a moment. It was from Carol. Opening the letter, I found a long apology written in careful handwriting. She acknowledged her guilt, writing that her heart had been broken by fertility treatments, but that this could never be an excuse. And at the end, She wrote that she'd learned what a real family was from Emma's courage and my strength. I finished reading the letter with mixed feelings. The anger hadn't disappeared yet. But at the same time, I could understand that she too had been a wounded person. I couldn't move forward with hatred alone. Carol had received a suspended sentence and was required to attend psychiatric counseling. Mark had been fired from his company and lost his social credibility. He was ordered to pay child support, but unemployed, he had almost no ability to pay. I put the letter in a drawer. I didn't write back. But I didn't throw it away either. Maybe someday I'd understand the meaning of this letter. One evening, while doing homework, Emma asked, "Mama, I have to write an essay about family. What should I write?" I looked at my daughter while holding Noah. Emma's eyes were direct and pure. "Family, Emma," I smiled. "It's not just about blood relations. It's people who trust each other, protect each other, support each other. Like the three of us." Emma smiled happily. "Yeah, I get it. I'll write that." My daughter turned to her notebook and began moving her pen. Watching her profile, I was grateful again for this child's courage. An 8-year-old girl had stood up to protect her family. That strength would surely be a lifelong treasure. Outside the window, the winter sun was setting. Orange light illuminated our small apartment room. Noah made a small sound. I looked down at my son and smiled gently. "It's okay, Noah. Mama and your big sister will always protect you." Emma turned around and waved to her brother. "We're a family, Noah. A real family." I gazed at my 2 children. This small family was everything to me. No money, no big house, no husband. But we had each other. We had a bond we could trust. That was enough. The new life of our new family was quietly beginning.